One of my favorite things is when we hear back from all of you in our audience with questions about the game. Sometimes it's equipment related or destination related, but every once in a while, those questions reach into an area that I think merit bringing in some experts to provide not only some answers, but some insight and some background. And the world of course rating, handicapping, and all of those things kind of lends itself to expertise. And so I am happy to welcome into the program a trio of experts, one of whom, if you're watching us on YouTube, one of whom is taunting us with palm trees and sunshine in the background, while the rest of us are bundled up and sitting inside the tundra of, at least in my case, in Michigan. So let me welcome in from all three of them work as volunteers with the Golf Association of Michigan. Let me welcome in first the course rating coordinator, that is Hunter Cook, who is in Saginaw, along with the committee chair, Lori Puskas, and past GAM president and a course rating expert in Mark Baltimore. And Lori, I'll start with you. Go ahead, tell everybody where you are and why you're taunting us with palm trees.
Well, I live down here in Florida about 6.5 months a year. So I'm down here this week, but I'll be joining you all back in Michigan Friday. So
it's, I think it's 33 here right now. What is your current temp as you're sitting outside?
I think it's 82.
82. Yeah, that's a little different. All right, guys, we can let Lori go now and just maybe carry on this. No. Okay, Hunter, let me ask you the first question. And just so you all know, not only the three of you, but everybody in our audience, I'm going to ask you some questions that I might know the answer to. I'm not pretending that I know all of them, but I'm going to kind of act as an advocate for our listeners, and they cover a gamut of experience in the game and playing abilities and that kind of thing. So if I throw a question at you and you're like, does he really not know this? It's possible that I do, and I'm advocating on behalf of somebody else. And it's also possible that I have no idea what I'm talking about. So Hunter, let's go right off the top as the coordinator for a course rating team. Why does course rating matter?
Yeah, so that's a big question. So the course rating in the handicapping world, so under the World Handicap System, course rating is the most fundamental part of the system. So the USGA formerly and now with the World Handicap System, we are able to take those handicaps portable, and that's the whole point of the World Handicap System and the former USGA Handicap System, is that if you play on course A and then go to course B, your handicap is portable between those courses. Now, unlike basketball or football or what have you, golf courses are not the same. You might play one course that's 6,600 yards and tough as nails, and you might play another course that's 5,500 yards and is maybe relatively flat or easy or whatever. So the course rating system is there to bridge that gap in the handicapping system. So on the scorecard at a lot of courses or whatever, you'll have those numbers, and those numbers relate to two different things. There's the course rating, which is the evaluation of how many strokes on average it would take the scratch player to complete that. And then the slope rating, which is a calculation between what a scratch and a bogey player would score on that course. So basically those numbers are like benchmark numbers to then calculate your handicap. So the course rating and the slope rating are used in the handicap differential formula. So when you go in, if a listener has a handicap index right now, when you go in and you say, oh, I shot 84 on this given day, and then when you enter that score, it gives you this random number that's the differential number. And that's a calculation with the course rating and the slope rating to give you a number that is then used as the weighted averages into your handicap index.
Okay, so let me jump in for a quick second, Hunter. One more time, I want you to give the Reader's Digest. Course rating is what?
Course rating is, in layman's terms, it's the most fundamental information for posting scores for your handicap index.
Okay, and it's the expected score of a scratch golfer to complete that course, right?
Yes.
That's the course rating. The slope rating, in one sentence,
is the differential between the scratch rating, which is the course rating, and the bogey rating.
Okay, so now, Mark, you're smiling a little bit as I ask him those questions, because this is a concept that's difficult to convey in one sentence, right? It's sort of a difficult, put it in a nutshell explanation.
It is impossible to designate that in one sentence. So I applaud Hunter and his attempt at brevity, but
Yes.
it's a very difficult concept. And having said that, with the course rating being the expected outcome on that particular set of tees on that course for a scratch player or an index of 0, 4 out of 16 rounds, that means the other 12 rounds are expected to be higher than that course rating number. Similarly, the slope rating is an indicator for a bogey player of what sort of difficulty they have ahead that day, where a slope rating in the 100 teens would certainly fit lots of different bogey players. Once you get into the 120s, 130s, that becomes an extremely difficult course for a bogey player. And once you're beyond the threshold of 140, the bogey player should be looking for a set of shorter tees with a lower slope number.
And so for everybody listening, when you take your scorecard from your recent or perhaps your next round, and you'll see different ratings for different sets of tees. That's why, Lori, because in many ways you're playing a different golf course. Is that a fair way of putting it? Lori, is that a fair way of putting it?
Length adds difficulty generally. So and length is one of the biggest indicators in the course rating. So that's fair, I guess.
At what point in your love of the game, Lori, did this whole issue become important enough to you that you stepped up to be the committee chair? Why did you start to care about this?
Well, I've been doing course rating for GAM for, I don't know, over 10 years. Since I've noticed a lot of the rates that came up this year and the year before I've done before. So that was over 10 years ago. As a captain, and working with the other captains, I found it nice to be ahead of the committee, because I like pulling us all together and all of us working together and making sure that we're all doing things the same way. And so the USGA and GAM, obviously, they want us, collaborating and doing everything the same. So I don't know. I love course rating. We have great teams. We have great captains. We have great training. We have great people from the office that help us out. And then such as Hunter and Mark, who's just always there to answer a question or to help out with training. And it's just a great organization. So I love it.
So in this state, Hunter, is Michigan doing it the same way as Ohio and doing it the same way as Florida and North Carolina? Does every state association in America handle course rating using the same criteria, the same methodology, so that, as you mentioned earlier, it really is a fair comparison to take it into that World Handicap system?
Yeah. So the system, the methodology, the criteria, the numbers, the evaluation is 100% the same around the world now. With the World Handicap system now in 2020, it's 100% the same. Obviously, in the U.S. with the USGA, it's been the same criteria for decades now. Because obviously the course rating system comes with over 100 years of research into this that creates the criteria and stuff. But each state has its own slightly different process that of how they get there, what criteria they evaluate on, the first day they're at the course, the second day they're at the course, how they record that data or whatever. The methodology and the criteria are the exact same, but every state has kind of built their own system for how that criteria is gathered on the golf course. And then that gets put into the tables, and then it comes out with the same result across the world.
So, Mark, a typical rhythm for rating a new golf course looks like what? from a GAM standpoint, from the volunteer team standpoint, whether it's Hunter or Lori or yourself or the other members of the course rating team, what does it look like when the course says, hey, we need to get rated because we want to be a conforming course. We want to make sure we have indexes available. We want to be USGA compliant. What's it look like?
Well, we, during the course rating days when a lot of construction was going on, we were blessed by having many opportunities to actually meet with the architect and get their ideas and principles that they brought forward on each of these unique courses. So that's a real blessing. If I may use the Loop as the most unique golf course or two golf courses that we have to rate, and there aren't any others like it in the world. Unique experience with Tom Doak being there on the initial day. We measured the golf course in both directions, not only the length of the golf course from each of the teeing grounds to the center of the green, but green complexes. And the green complexes, when changing the direction of entry, obviously have differences. So in the morning, we measured the course for length and gathered green dimensions for the red. And in the afternoon, we did the exact same process, going for the black tees and coming out with a different set of green complex information. As Lori was just saying, it's very important that we understand that length is the number one value or number one quote unquote obstacle to being able to shoot a specific score. The green complex application is the next most important. Obviously, you've got generally 2 putts expected on each, and the undulations of that green surface are important. The quickness of the green speeds are important. That overall green complex application, how difficult it is to hit a green and stay on the green too, are very important. That's the process. Meeting Tom Doak during measuring day was just delightful to get his. The guy's an absolute genius. The Loop is an amazing process, and we were able to measure and measure both courses on one day. And we went back a following Friday and rated the course with a group of 16. We rated the reds, and then the following Friday again, we rated the black with another 16 folks. Quite a dynamic opportunity.
Yeah, and by the way, I find conversations with Tom Doak to be fascinating. The man is a genius. He's a creative mastermind. That he really is. What he did with the Loop is quite phenomenal. But I'm curious that from the course rating standpoint, why does it matter if the architect is there? If you're out walking it, if you're measuring it, if you're experiencing it, how does his input perhaps help influence the rating?
That's an excellent question. And it's an opportunity. Meeting with the architect, and we've met with Jerry Matthews on a few occasions. And I'm never sure of the pronunciation, but is it Albanese?
Yeah, Paul Albanese. Yeah.
Albanese, yes. We've had an opportunity to meet with him on 2 occasions as well. But getting their insight into how they went to a bare piece of ground and achieved a routing is an amazing thing. Gives us a new perspective of what exactly they're looking for, how they dealt with the terrain, natural features such as water that existed on the property before and how that might be modified and altered in the routing, which direction to head out in and to come around. So it's just a gaining of appreciation for what that architect has done to bring forth a product, a golf course that will be enjoyable for years and decades and centuries to come.
So Lori, on course rating day, or days if it's plural, you get out of the car. Do you have a bag on your shoulder, or do you have a clipboard in your hand? Are you getting in a golf cart to go and play or to go and walk? I want everybody to understand how it physically works.
As I get out of my car, I'm usually asking for help because I have a lot of things to carry. I have my stimp meter. I have tall reflectors that my husband made out of PVC pipes with the reflector at the top with little stakes in the bottom. So I usually have about 4 or 5 of those. I have a bag for the balls because we're testing the green, and a tape measure. I have a lot of things. There's in extra books and what have you. So what happens is I usually show up at the course with the Form 1s that we use ready for the raters to use, and measuring things. So on measuring day, we go in and we have our meeting, and we head out with a small crew, usually 4 of us. And we have 2 people measuring the distances of all the tee pads, from the tee pads to a point out in the fairway, and then from the fairway to the front to the green. Then we have another, and we help measure the depth of the greens. So we have sticks with lines on those, 5 feet, 6 feet, 10 feet, to know how deep the green, the bunkers are around the green, because that certainly makes it more difficult. Let's see, then they're stimping the greens to see, are they running, how fast they're running for the speed, but then they're also testing, what what would you say, if it's a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 green. So if you hit up, it might go a third of the way. If you hit down, it might go 3 times the way. So we're testing that too for all the undulations.
So you're not playing the golf course at this time?
No, we're not playing the golf course. We're measuring to the penalty areas from there at the green. And so then we do that on every hole. So then we take that information from that day, all the measurements that we've done, and we put them in our forms. And then we go back another day to actually rate the course. And then when we rate the course, again, we have a meeting in the morning. We head out with our teams, usually a team on the front 9 and the back 9. And then we do all the measurements on the course. Again, this time we're going to landing zones. So we're going to we have a person assigned to each tee, and also for men and women. So say there are 5 tees at a course, we may have someone on the 4 or 5 tees for men, and probably 3 tees for women. So we'll have a team of 8 on each side. And they're going to the landing zones of the bogey person, and then to the scratch person. And they're measuring the width of the fairways. They're measuring the width to, how far is the pond? It should be a penalty area or extreme rough and that type of thing. So we're making all these measurements. We're looking at the topography on the ground. We're looking at elevations to the green. So we're making all these notations on our forms. Then we'll go to their second landing zone and do the same thing, and then go to the green. We have our little meeting. We talk about the difficulty of the trees at the landing zones. We all collaborate, and we all help each other out on the course. And then we go to the hole and we do the same thing.
So at this point in the process, if it's a new course, I'm assuming, Hunter, that the course hasn't yet printed up its yardage books and doesn't yet have the distance plates on the sprinkler heads, so that, you step up, right? They're helping to get that information, I would think, from your results, or are you guys doing all that independent of whatever the course already has done?
Do it completely independent of what the course has.
Okay. So Hunter, how often do you guys come in and do a rating on a course, and the numbers that you come up with are very different from what they've already printed, either on a scorecard or on a sprinkler head? I see Mark's eyebrows raised, so I'm guessing it happens.
So that certainly happens from time to time, and there's generally 2 reasons for that. First is process differences. So as the course rating system is updated, sometimes the point in which you measure from, or the point in which you measure to, slightly changes based off of that process. So if the center of the green, based off of how you would measure the green, moves slightly, that could add 1 or 2 yards, subtract 1 or 2 yards. If you do whatever, or if where you measure on the tee changes. The other one is simply where the rating team chooses that reflector in the center of the fairway to be, because that will generally make a big difference. And that is why, as Mark put at first, I was thinking in the back of my mind, one of the biggest conversations you can have with a new golf course is, what is the intended line of play? If you take the loop, for example, there's not inherently a lot of points to necessarily say, okay, this is the intended line of play. If I put the reflector 8 yards off center, that might add a couple more yards onto that hole. So making sure that the rating team, and that's why, particularly when it comes to yardage measurement, because it's such a big piece of the puzzle to creating to building what the course rating is going to be, we take such care to make sure that the measurement of the length of the hole is done using the correct pivot points, etc., so that it's right. And sometimes what we'll find is maybe either the last team did it wrong, or what we often find is that maybe there was a change made to the golf course. Maybe the golf course went from 4 tees to 5 tees, but it shifted where the tees are measured from on a tee pad. Maybe a new tee pad was built with a different angle or whatever, even though it was the same number. We'll find those things, and that's why we are required under the World Handicap system to re-rate a golf course every 10 years to keep its ratings active and keep their ratings published. It's because over the course of 10 years, there will be changes either that were intentionally made by the golf course or unintentionally made by Mother Nature that will make a large impact on the playability of that given golf course.
So, Hunter, you and my son are close to the same age. A few weeks ago, I asked him, "Hey, have you been alive when there was a telephone attached to the wall in the kitchen?" He's like, "I don't think so. I think we had a cordless phone is the first I remember. And then, of course, you went into mobile phones." I'm wondering, I already know this answer for Hunter, but for Lori or Mark, have you ever done course rating in the era prior to laser distance measuring devices? Are you taking out the big roller wheel and watching the little yardage clicks go on the thing? I mean, because it's a different world. And it also leads me to another question. So this is part B. Could much of this be done via GPS measurement from a satellite instead of having to get out there and walk it by foot, Mark?
So 25 years ago was my first season doing course rating. And walking with the wheel is absolutely correct. So the courses were generally measured.
Mark, at least you didn't say I started before there was a wheel.
Well, when the crust of the earth was still cooling, how about that? Since we've got Kilauea crusting the world's earth right now,
right?
before that happened. But anyway, yes, the wheel. We all took lessons in how to stride exactly 1 yard, so that became a little bit easier for lots of folks. But we walked the width of each fairway. We walked the width of the center of the fairway to the obstacles that were lateral, right and left. So yes, we did begin that. I'm going to say it was probably in the early 2000s that the lasers became inexpensive enough. The technology had driven the price so that a normal rater would be able to afford one on his own at, $300, $400, $450 is where we began seeing more of them show up in our bag of tricks that Lori talked about as we get out of the car. So yeah, that happened in the early 2000s. Became much more. We were able to rate more quickly. Let me phrase it that way. At that time, with a laser shot rather than spending time walking laterally.
Lori, when you work with the committees, of which you are the committee chair, is there ever, I don't know how to put this the most politically correct way. Is there ever anybody who says, no, I know a better way to do it, so I'm just going to do it my way? And as you're out there as part of a team, you've got to maintain the standard. You've got to come back with consistency so how do you handle the young whippersnapper like a Hunter Cook? I'm just kidding, Hunter, who comes out and says, hey, I know how to do this better. I can just get out my phone and I can do this. There is a way to do this. And there's a methodology that has proven to be successful over all these years. How do you convey that to the volunteers that might be new in the game?
I think it's important to always listen to the new folks because in the process, if they have an idea that we could possibly all use to make it more efficient, still doing the same thing, not changing the way we measure or anything like that. I think it's important to listen to that and to consider that. So I always listen. If someone has a suggestion, it's great. But when it comes to the actual process that's set by the USGA, we all have to be doing the same thing. You know, we all belong to the World Handicap System, and that's why, you know, we go to the USGA calibration seminars that the USGA PGA puts on, and we make sure that Michigan is doing it right. And you know, they have people coming from all the different states in USGA. I mean, I took a test last year. I had to take a written test before I went, and then we went down there and they went over all the answers with people from all the different states. We were down in North Carolina last spring. And then we went out on the course and they had us rate 4 holes and they tested us on it. And I think that's a really good thing to make sure that everyone's doing things the same way.
Okay, so I want to make sure we properly define or explain, Hunter, the differences between the measuring day and then the rating day. Measuring is measuring. It's hard. It's data. You know, it's just a laser. There's the number. It's on the clipboard. It's for these different shot values. And then there's the rating day. How much latitude or personal interpretation is baked into the rating process?
Very little. So basically, I would say so basically, just to outline a little bit better, there's 10 obstacle factors that are part of the rating process, and then there's the distance piece of the process. So basically, distance and all of the effective playing length, whether that's layups or roll or altitude if you're out in Colorado or whatever, those pieces come under distance. And then there's a distance rating given for both the scratch and the bogey player. And then there's an obstacle rating that makes a roll. And there's 10 different obstacles: topography, fairway, green target, recoverability in rough, bunkers, crossings, laterals, trees, green surface, and then psychological. So there's these 10 factors. Psychological, is a computation of the number of high rating values. So the number of extremely difficult things out there, that doesn't even that gets evaluated in the computer afterwards. So then you have the other 9 factors. The only one, so 7 of those factors are a piece of data and a piece of data that are combined together on a table to give you what the rating value is. There's no way that someone could, as long as they're finding the table value correctly, there's no way that they could personally interpret something a different way. The only 2 that's somewhat in that regard is topography and trees. And those are 2 things that both with the USGA calls that there is throughout the year, the USGA calibration seminars that our rating teams are sent to every year, and then by extension, our GAM trainings that we do throughout the winter, we consistently talk about what do each of the somewhat subjective categories mean. And the USGA actually has pictures and statements of what those mean, so that when those are applied on the golf course, they're applied universally across the board by all of our raters, and all of our raters have extensive training to know what those subjective pieces are. And those subjective pieces generally make not even enough of a piece of the pie in order to make it actually influence what the actual final numbers are when they come out. So basically 99.9% of it is 100% data on data.
And so, Mark, this is the part that I really find quite fascinating personally. And that is that in the end, we as golfers will have an index that we're supposed to play to roughly 25% of the time, right? That's what that general measurement is, that you're going to play. And so, you know, I find myself playing very rarely it doesn't seem like it's 25% of the time, since it gets 2.5% of the time. What would be the difference on a global system if course rating teams around the world were instructed to come up with a fresh set of numbers that would lead to an index that a player would play to 75% of the time? You know, the core of my question is, how did they arrive at you should only play to this 25% of the time?
I'm going to go take a half step backwards and indicate that the USGA and now the World Handicap System has a list of rules for us. They're There are only 9 of them. Number 5 is the most important, and that is that we are to rate the guide, not at all how we would play the hole or how we would perceive a scratch player to play the hole or a bogey player to play the hole. So we must rate by the guide and exactly what it says with those dimensions and those opportunities for developing rating values. That means that we, a Michigan team going to a golf course here in Michigan, would achieve a set of numbers. A team following us from New Zealand would come to the same course and rate the same tees for both genders, and they would come up with very nearly exactly the same numbers that we have come up with. So the calibration is extremely important. So then we have the follow-up to that question of yours is, how is it determined that the course rating is what a scratch player plays 20 to 25% of the time? So that is derived from another calculation, another formula, and that was developed in the 70s by a group, a collaboration with the USGA and some mathematicians from MIT. And the issue is you play, at the time, it was 20 rounds of golf. Now it's 16. The highest of those, the highest half of those scores are eliminated. So if you've got, in the old days, 20 of those, 10 of them were pitched, and you would then evaluate the average score for the better 10 rounds of golf. So if you've got the better 10 and an average, 5 of those 10, or 1/4, would then be equal to the course rating value for that scratch player, and that's how that's determined. And so that the slope rating as well as the course rating have an opportunity for players that are not a bogey player, a 20 index, for instance, or a 0 index. A 10 index would be able to go to the chart at the course and see that the slope rating at 122 for a 10 index, he would be able to achieve 9 strokes for that particular round of golf on that particular course that day. So all of it, it's just a way of manipulating numbers based on averages. So I hope I was clear enough on that 25% deal, that you take the overall 20, lop half of them off, average the best 10, and your average of the best 10 would then be where your differential ends and where your index comes into play.
Yeah, there was an era in course construction not all that long ago where the goal was to create the hardest possible golf course.
The bear, Jack Nicklaus, for Mr. 9 up at the Grand Traverse, was that philosophy specifically. One of the toughest courses in Michigan, period.
And then along came Mr. Doak's Black Forest, which is no longer a golf course. That was in the Gaylord area. And then along came Dunmagloss and Charlevoix, and on we can go, where the architect was given a mandate. I want this thing to be nearly impossible. And thankfully that mindset has changed over the years. But Lori, I'm wondering how often it might happen that at the end of the rating adventure, where the results are provided back to the golf course, how often do you find the course operator comes back and says, hey, that number is way too high, or that number is way too low, because they had a preconceived notion when they were building it or revising it, renovating it, where they had a number in mind and come back to you with, I just don't like those findings?
Actually, I'd say it's minimal. I think that if we have good communication with the club, I think that the numbers come in pretty close. On occasion, we've had to talk about the how fast the greens are running. Some clubs, maybe that historically had really fast greens, don't anymore. And so usually I think good communication care of that. And also I invite the pro, the superintendent, whatever, to join us out on the course while we're doing it. And they learn a lot and they're able to answer any questions that we have. So, you know, if they've made changes to the course, for instance, Red Run has made changes to their course. They've added a lot of bunkers, beautiful bunkers, by the way. And they have toughened up their course. And when we rated it, it did come back harder this year. And they expected it. And we kind of did too. As soon as I went out and measured it and I saw what they had done, I thought, oh, this is going to bump up. You know, I mean, I could see it, you know, and it did based on all the input into the forms. So I think just with good communication, I don't think they're ever really, I've never experienced big surprise on what they come out to be.
Okay, so Hunter, the one of the outcomes of a course rating ends up on the scorecards wherever we're going to play, and some of that results in the ranking of the holes 1 through 18 as a different level of difficulty. I have a couple of questions for all of you on this, and I'll start with Hunter. What is the definition of the number 1 handicap hole on a golf course and the number 18 handicap hole on the golf course? How did they achieve that distinction?
Yes, let me take a step back here for a second, because the former handicap holes and now stroke index allocation has changed quite a bit from 2019 to 2020 with the adoption of the World Handicap System. So this is, I mean, obviously this is probably the topic that we get the most questions from a club about is this specific thing, because their members are saying, why is this, you know, whatever, number 1, number 2, number 17, whatever. So under the new system, courses are eligible to get a recommendation through the USGA based on the course rating data to come up with a stroke index allocation. They're not required to use the recommendation that the USGA gives with the data, but they are recommended basically to do so. And one of the biggest benefits that we tell a lot of the clubs in this regard is that instead of having someone at the club be kind of responsible for creating those numbers, if you use the recommendation, it's basically like a third-party recommendation of those holes. So now what do those numbers actually mean?
Hang on, let me interrupt you for just a second. Are you telling me that any golf course at its own discretion can number the holes in any way they choose?
Yes, and I will also say why this is a recommendation to use the USGA and not a requirement, is because USGA, when they went through the World Handicap System and they were collecting all this data and whatever, they came up with the results of the study. And it basically shows that over the entirety of the world and over the entirety of basically how they could create a handicap stroke allocation system, it is statistically insignificant what the outline of those holes are. One of the options that was actually brought up was to potentially create a standard allocation of where the strokes would be for every single course across the world. Now, obviously, that isn't what ended up happening. But basically what we've done is, and what the USGA done and the World Handicap System have done to build this is they've basically said, what we're going to base that off of is where does the bogey player require the stroke in order to be competitive with the scratch player.
Right.
So basically what happens is all of the course training data is calculated, instead of it being like a full 18 or a full 9-hole rating, it's basically broken out hole by hole. And basically what happens is they take the scratch differential and the bogey differential on that hole by hole situation and find where that gap is the widest. And that then is ran through another formula in the computer. And then there's also this triad system that makes it so that strokes aren't preferred to be given at the beginning or the end of the round where they're going to make an extreme difference in a match. So it's basically ran through that, it's weighted through that system, and then that differential is what ends up creating that 1 through 18 ranking.
Okay, so does that leave open the door for me to go to, or some members to go to their professional and lobby for the renumbering of the holes, because that's where the guy always loses the skins when he has to give a shot up on that hole.
That likely happens at clubs already. That's
Lori's nodding in agreement. She's like, yes, it does. Lori, you have an example?
Well, I know that a lot of the clubs, since they've started offering this, the club pros are very happy to take the rankings from us, because so many members, they all have their own idea of which
Right.
holes should be ranked which way. And so they said, you know what? If Dan provides this for us, that's what we're going with, because
It's out
then
of my
we-
hands.
no, exactly. No more of this discussion. Yeah.
Okay, so Mark, I have a process question for you on the tail end of all this that we're talking about. And I'm going to use myself and my two good golfing buddies, Dwayne and Dickie, as examples. Okay. So I'm a 4.8. So usually playing at a 5. Those guys are 10s. So we get to our golf course where we play most of our rounds. And for years, I was, I'm giving them 4 or 5, depending on where they're fluctuating. But for years, they would take those strokes on the 18, 17, 16, 15, 14. And I said, oh, no, if we were dotting up our cards as if we were in a tournament, I would be getting shots on 1 through 5. You would be getting shots on 1 through 5. But the difference would be on the 6 through 10 handicap holes. Who's right in this, Mark Baltimore?
I'd say neither.
Darn, come on. You have to say I'm right because I'm the host. Come on.
No, well, okay, you're right, but let's modify what it is that you're saying.
You had me at you're right. You could have stopped right there.
Got it. So you want to make the match fair and equitable is what you're really trying to
I don't
achieve.
really, but I'm supposed to. Yes, I got it.
Please. Your double D buddies are interested in a fair match.
They are.
So the old days, up until about I'm going to say it was in the mid 90s, the awarding of strokes per hole, number 1 through 18, always based on the difficulty, the perceived difficulty of the hole against par. Lots of clubs began becoming more influential with match play in that time, and a match was between individuals or teams that on occasion, on a difficult hole, the high handicapper needs a stroke to be competitive with the low handicap player. So there was always the controversy between difficulty against par for a variety of formats, skins, as you say, and Staplefords and others that derive a score based on the difficulty against par. And then you've got match play, which is completely different. So in actual fact, there should have been 2 different index allocations listed on a card, those that were playing a format of difficulty against par and those that were in a match play situation. The new system 2020 that came out is a combination of both of those applications, and the strokes are allocated on the triad system, where predominantly on the front 9, the odd numbered strokes are allocated, and on the back 9, where the even number of strokes are allocated. There's still an opportunity, if the handicap committee at a certain club determines that the back 9 is decidedly more difficult than the front, they may use the odd numbered values for the back 9 and the even on the front. But with those triad applications, it's a much fairer application. Rather than giving up those strokes early in the round or at the end of the round, they're more well dispersed throughout the round. If you're waiting until, like your example there, your buddies were taking them on the holes 15, 16, 17, and 18, the match may well be over by that time, and you never would get to those.
And I'm
holes
sorry,
for those strokes to be used.
Mark, I didn't mean to misstate what we were doing. I'm talking about allocating the strokes on the holes that are handicap numbers, not hole numbers. Did I say
Sure.
that wrong? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't mean end of the round. I mean,
Got it.
I'm getting dotted up on the holes that are handicapped 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Right.
So
That's
you
where
know,
they should be. Yep.
so
And
that's 3 and
that's
2.
where they should be. And as always, being the lower handicap, typically that score then competing within your group or your tournament is based on the lowest players index. So in fact, I'll rephrase that. You are correct. You want to apply those on handicap holes 1, 2, 3, 4.
I always run into the terminology challenge when I'm trying to use numbers like that and all that. So I think the important thing for us to point out here for everybody is that I'm right. I just really think that that's the takeaway from this whole discussion. No. So,
And I will agree that you, when stated correctly and when my understanding was corrected, you certainly are correct.
well, no, because it's a confusing thing, because there have been
Yep.
times where I've gone to play with others who are much better players than myself, and they'll say, well, I'm just going to play off a scratch and then you'll get these. And I get that as well. I want to get to the same result, whatever route it is that we take to get there. And as you said, have it be equitable, have it be fun. And for the outlandish 50 cents per skin that we're playing for, I don't want to change anybody's life with an unfair situation, mine or my buddies who are playing. Lori, as we kind of head down the home stretch here, a question for you, and this will apply to all three of you as well. You do all of it, and this takes not just hours, this takes days, this takes weeks of the season. This is a very labor-intensive volunteer effort. So, Lori, why do you do this?
I enjoy it. I enjoy the process. I really enjoy the people that I'm doing it with. I think GAM is what it is because of the wonderful volunteers that they have that do this. I mean, you get to know them so well. I mean, they become kind of like your friends and family. You know, you work with them all the time, and it's just enjoyable. I mean, the process is enjoyable. Being with the people is enjoyable, and just seeing all the different courses is fascinating too. You know, just the way that they're put together, and yeah, they're beautiful. So it's just fun.
Hunter, you've got a few things going on in your world. Why is this one of them?
Yeah, I mean, so before I got on GAM staff in this past December, I had volunteered for 2 years. Predominantly that was during COVID. So I was coaching high school golf a little bit before that, and then when COVID happened and everything kind of shut down, I got into rating, and I had always had an interest in golf course architecture, particularly. So it was kind of a good fit in that regard. But now that I'm in the staff role, I think our program is really unique in the sense that of just how dynamic it really is. We had in 2022, we had 126 volunteers volunteer with us. And that number continues to go up just about every year. We completed 67 ratings across the state, which is an insane amount of days. If you consider that those are 2-day projects on the course for each of those, and then there's countless number of hours that the captains and the staff put in before, in between those days, after those days, inputting the data, etc. And just that, GAM, both between the commitment of our volunteers to be extremely highly educated, but also GAM does things that are just, really dynamic in the course rating field. We participated in the USGA short course portability study this year, where we, helped guide the path for the 2024, when short courses will be integrated into a player's handicap index. We've, done countless number of studies to see, what the impact of certain things that raters do on the golf course are, and to make sure that, from a data-driven approach, that we are being the most consistent and most calibrated with, anywhere across the country. Because, we obviously want to put the best product out for our Michigan golf courses. So.
Yeah. And Mark, before I ask you the why you do this question, there's one other process question that I forgot to ask earlier. When you're re-rating a course that's open and they've gone through some renovations, or it's their 10-year window and it's time for their renewal, do they have to close down, or are you doing this while play is going on?
We do it while play is going on. One of the very nice things about the clubs, both private and daily fee associations here in Michigan, is they understand and appreciate what we do. So typically we get a half an hour of tea times that they dedicate to us in the morning so that we're able to begin our process. We get a half an hour lead time on the first players that come out, and we generally beat them around. And so they're out there, play all around us, and we're able to get done what needs to be done. That's the kind of the process question I think that you were asking about. Plays going on, and we enjoy it. We engage and entertain players as they're around as well.
So now the why question for you. As a past president of the GAM, talk about investment of time and throw course rating on top of that. Why? Why do you do it?
Well, first of all, I'm a statistician, and statistical inference is very important to me, and that's what this is. Educationally, I began the process thinking about being a teacher. This has an opportunity where I've studied and learned the process, and I'm able to.
Somebody's here. Somebody's somewhere nearby.
I am able to pass along some of the information I've been able to study up on and read. So not only are the statistics important, golf's always been important to me, as well as the opportunity to come in contact with, make new friends. Of the 126 raters this year, I had direct interventions, or not intervention, but direct access and time I spent with 96 of them. So I have 96 new friends. So it's a great time, great opportunity.
After all that work, an intervention might be needed at some point, just so you know. And by
I
the way,
enjoy it way too much for an intervention.
I thought maybe that was my buddies Dwayne and Dickie knocking on the door to come and protest how we were doing things. But, well, I'll tell you what, to the three of you, it's fine. A few years ago on my TV show, we did a whole special with golf course superintendents. We called it the Super Supers. And I enjoyed it immensely. And for us, it was a change of pace. It was a little bit different from what we normally do. And we were over at Egypt Valley and gathered with a bunch of supers. I would love to do, and I'm going to have to talk with the powers that be, we would love to do a TV program that really provided the visual storyline for the things you've been describing in these last 50 minutes or so, because it's fascinating to me. And it's a vital part of the game if you're serious about the game. Now, if you're a first-time golfer and you're just out there to see if you can get a ball airborne, I get it. You probably didn't listen to this whole podcast anyways. You're like, I don't even know what they're talking about. But for those of you who are in this game for life and who really want to play it the right way and want to have a fair and equitable competition and all those things, course rating is the foundation of all of that. And I'm hoping we can help tell that story again in the days ahead. But in the meantime, Lori Puskas and Henner Cook and Mark Baltima, thank you so much for your insight, for your contributions to the game. And I think the next time we have this conversation, it should be wherever Lori is right now, as opposed to where the other three of us are at this time. So thank you all.